Sir Isaac Newton's famous remark, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people," is more than a clever confession of personal frustration. It is a profound observation about the limits of human reason, the contrast between natural law and human behavior, and the enduring tension between logic and emotion that defines social life. Spoken by one of history's greatest scientific minds, the statement carries particular weight. If Newton, who uncovered the mathematical order governing the universe, found human behavior impossible to predict, what does that say about the nature of humanity itself? At its core, Newton's quote draws a sharp distinction between two realms of reality. On one side stands the physical universe, planets, stars, gravity, and motion, governed by consistent, discoverable laws. On the other side stands human society, animated by desire, fear, pride, greed, love, and irrational impulse. The heavens move with obedience to mathematical principles. People move according to inner storms that refuse to be reduced to equations. Newton's words remind us that intelligence alone is not enough to master human affairs because people are not governed solely by reason. Newton lived during the Enlightenment, an era that celebrated reason, science, and the belief that the world could be understood through rational inquiry. His own achievements embodied this spirit. By formulating the laws of motion and universal gravitation, he demonstrated that the cosmos was not chaotic or mysterious, but orderly and predictable. A comet's path, a planet's orbit, and a falling apple could all be explained through the same mathematical framework. Nature, it seemed, spoke the language of numbers. Yet Newton's quote reveals an important humility. Despite his mastery of physical laws, he acknowledged that human behavior resists such clarity. People do not act according to fixed formulas. They contradict themselves, act against their own interests, and repeat mistakes even when consequences are obvious. Where planets follow predictable paths, people veer wildly, driven by emotion, bias, and illusion. In this contrast lies one of the deepest truths about human existence. We are not purely rational beings. History repeatedly confirms Newton's insight. Wars have been fought not because they made logical sense, but because of pride, fear, ideology, or wounded honor. Economic bubbles form not because data support them, but because collective excitement overwhelms caution. Brilliant individuals sabotage their own success through envy, addiction, or impulsive decisions. Even when people possess knowledge, they often fail to act on it wisely. Knowing what is right does not guarantee doing what is right. Modern psychology helps explain why human behavior defies calculation. The human mind is not a neutral processor of information. It is shaped by cognitive biases, emotional conditioning, and unconscious drives. Fear can override logic. Group identity can silence independent thought. Short-term pleasure often triumphs over long-term benefit. Unlike physical objects, humans interpret reality subjectively, filtering facts through belief systems and emotional states. Two people can face the same situation and respond in entirely different ways. Newton himself experienced this unpredictability firsthand, particularly in financial matters. Late in life, he invested heavily in the South Sea Company, a speculative venture that eventually collapsed. Despite his unmatched intellectual brilliance, Newton was swept up in the collective frenzy of the market. When the bubble burst, he reportedly lost a significant fortune and later lamented his inability to predict human madness. The irony is striking. The man who could calculate celestial motion failed to anticipate human greed and speculation, including his own.
This personal experience reinforces the universality of Newton's insight. Intelligence does not grant immunity from irrationality. In fact, highly intelligent people can be especially vulnerable, as they may use their intellect to justify emotional decisions rather than question them. Human madness, in this sense, does not mean insanity in the clinical sense, but the chaotic tendencies of desire, fear, and ego that distort judgment. Newton's statement is not a condemnation of humanity, but an honest acknowledgement of its complexity. The quote also carries an implicit warning. If human behavior cannot be calculated with the same precision as natural phenomena, then attempts to engineer society purely through logic are bound to fail. Political systems, economic models, and social reforms often collapse because they underestimate the irrational elements of human nature. Policies that look perfect on paper falter in practice when people act emotionally, selfishly, or unpredictably. Newton's words caution against excessive faith in abstract models detached from psychological reality. At the same time, the quote invites humility in our dealings with others. If even the greatest scientific mind could not fully comprehend human behavior, then we should be slow to judge, quick to listen, and cautious in our expectations. People are not machines to be programmed or problems to be solved with formulas. They are living beings shaped by stories, wounds, hopes, and contradictions. Understanding people requires empathy as much as intellect. Newton's insight is especially relevant in the modern world, where data, algorithms, and artificial intelligence promise predictive power over human behavior. While technology can identify patterns and probabilities, it still struggles to capture the full range of human irrationality. Social media virality, sudden political shifts, and mass panics often defy expert predictions. The illusion that more data will make people fully predictable ignores the emotional and symbolic dimensions of human life. Newton's words remain a reminder that there will always be an element of surprise in human affairs. There is also a philosophical depth to the quote. The predictable motion of heavenly bodies suggests a universe governed by order, while the unpredictability of human behavior suggests freedom. People are not bound by fixed trajectories. They choose, rebel, create, and destroy. Madness, in this sense, is the price of freedom. Without it, humanity would be orderly but lifeless, efficient but soulless. Our unpredictability is both our greatest weakness and our greatest strength. In acknowledging his inability to calculate human madness, Newton implicitly recognizes the limits of reductionism, the idea that everything can be broken down into simple, measurable components. Human beings are not merely collections of inputs and outputs. They are meaning-making creatures, driven by narratives as much as by facts. To understand them requires wisdom, not just intelligence, character, not just calculation. Ultimately, Newton's quote endures because it speaks to a timeless human experience. We live in a world of astonishing scientific progress, yet personal relationships remain fragile, societies remain divided, and individuals continue to struggle with inner chaos. We can send probes to distant planets, yet fail to communicate honestly with one another. We can model climate systems, yet ignore warnings out of convenience or denial. The contrast between what we can calculate and what we cannot remains stark. I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people, is therefore not a statement of defeat, but of wisdom. It acknowledges the brilliance of human reason while recognizing its boundaries. It invites respect for science without idolizing it, and realism about human nature without despair. In accepting that people cannot be fully calculated, we open the door to patience, humility, and compassion, qualities no equation can measure, yet which are essential for navigating the unpredictable orbit of human life.
Subscribe to this YouTube channel and share the video.